In honor of my first completed sketchbook, here is a sketchbook tour. I started this on February 3rd, 2018 and finished on June 10th. This is watercolor portraits of my daughter Ginny and I with an acrylic background. This is an acrylic portrait of Princess Leia, and I used a doily to trace that pattern out. I used dollar store acrylics for most of this stuff. This is my great-grandmother. Again, watercolor and then acrylic background. This is an acrylic skull. I like drawing skulls. That's about it to that. This is a pencil drawing of Princess Margaret with watercolor roses and background. I just finished watching The Crown, so I really wanted to paint her. This is a watercolor portrait of Mr. Forrest Gump. A watercolor beluga. I don't usually do animals, but I'm trying to branch out into it a little bit, but I really like belugas. Watercolor Kermit the Frog. I'm not really happy with this page, but this sketchbook was about trying new things, so I kept it, even though I don't love it. This is a watercolor portrait of Buttercup and Wesley from The Princess Bride with acrylic background, and again I used that same doily effect. It's a watercolor portrait of Claire Danes in Romeo and Juliet with a quote from the movie, well, Shakespeare quote, whatever. Watercolor background too. Tried to do a bit of a galaxy effect, I don't know. This is watercolor for Edward Bloom, and the rest is acrylic. This is from Big Fish. This is a watercolor portrait of Jane Eyre, and then this is acrylic, and this is watercolor again. This is another, just trying something new. It is acrylic. Watercolor portrait from the show Poldark with an acrylic background. Just kind of playing with more stark lines and such. This is an acrylic tree. I like this page. I don't like doing trees in acrylic. I much prefer watercolor, as you will see, because thus begins the trees. Here is a watercolor tree, and here are more watercolor trees, and here are more watercolor trees, and another watercolor tree. Here we take a break with Jessica Chastain. This is a pencil sketch with watercolor background, a watercolor dingle hopper with a splash of tea because I was not careful, a watercolor portrait of my brother's face on his cat's body for an art challenge. Oh, and look, watercolor trees, and watercolor trees, watercolor plants, Ariel, which I'm not happy with, but oh well. Me and Brian in the style of Bob's Burgers. Oh look, watercolor trees. And watercolor trees. This I had a lot of fun with, creating the edge around it with some tape. I'm hoping to recreate this on a larger scale sometime, because I really like how it turned out. Brian and I in the styles of different cartoons. Watercolor trees. This one I smudged at the last second, just as I was finishing, which is a bummer, but I don't like the mountain anyway, so whatever. And watercolor trees. This is another one I'd like to repeat on a larger scale. Disney characters, which I was doing with watercolor and a small paintbrush, which was incredibly tedious, and just kind of gave up because it was, as I said, tedious. Family portrait in watercolor. A robot enjoying a picnic in watercolor. A bear ordering a pizza on his cell phone. This is watercolor and micron pens, which I had just gotten. This is two BFFs. The robot's visiting from outer space, so they're catching up over dinner. They're having spaghetti and nuts and bolts. This is from a drawing prompt. The prompt was lollipop and mannequin, so that's what I came up with. Just a bouquet of flowers. A failed attempt to draw a Narnia map. And then that is a map just from my head. portrait of my doctor. A stormtrooper. This is done in acrylic, and the lines are gold Sharpie. This was just a doodle. The background's acrylic, and the rest is gold Sharpie. Gold Sharpie is one of my favorite tools. This is like a mosaic style painting. I just dabbed with acrylics till I was happy. This is an illustration from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I did this with Micron pens. The portrait of Ellen Ripley from the Alien movies. She's one of my favorite movie characters ever. This is just one of my favorite pages, for obvious reasons. That was done with watercolor. Here's another drawing prompt. The prompt was Island Paradise, so I drew a couple floating islands with, I don't know, physics-defying water or something. It doesn't make sense, so don't look at it for too long, but there's little guys doing various activities, little mountain climber over there. It's just a bunch of birds. I like drawing birds. This was a bird from my head. Watercolor. This is a recreation of Vermeer's painting Girl with a Pearl Earring, which I'm really proud of, and I actually might tear out to frame. It was basically a doodle while I was watching a Jets game one night, because I like the Jets. Another bird, another one from my head. He's disgruntled, and he's moving away, and his suitcase is full of worms. Bunch of Pokemon. This was a challenge I did. I drew this with my left hand and this with my right, which was very difficult. Just a sketch dump. Drew a little scene from Notting Hill, drew Jennifer Lawrence at the Oscars, half of Viola Davis's face, and Angelina Jolie, just practicing. This is a 30 Rock sketch dump. That's young Liz Lemon, Tracy Morgan, and Alec Baldwin. Or Tina Fey, Tracy Morgan, Alec Baldwin. I'll just stick with one. I did this as a continuous line drawing, so I did not pick up my pencil at all to draw those. Another kind of sketch dump here, just old Hollywood actresses: Audrey Hepburn, Lauren Bacall, Marilyn Monroe, Vivian Leigh, and Joan Crawford. And then just a few quotes from them to fill the page. This is just random sketches of body shapes, and I felt that was too full on, so I gave her emoji bosoms. And that's the end. That is my first ever fully completed sketchbook, and I am really proud of it. Thank you for watching.